You know why I like pen and paper so damn much? Because stories are the bridges, the connections between one human and another. Be it your wife, your kids, your mother, your father, and those relationships. But also those more distant relationships, those more sparsely populated relationships, those more
tangent
disconnected relationships. How do we know anything about anything that we haven't actually experienced ourselves?
Stories.
The written word. Dudes writing down stories, putting pen to paper, ideas from their brain or elsewhere onto a stone. The man can leave and the idea can remain. That's why I like pen and paper so damn much. It's important to understand and acknowledge the shoulders that you stand on. And I'm not just talking about your mom and dad or your grandparents or this country or that country or this time period or that time period. You stand on the shoulders of every human that lived before you. The collective experience of all humans is what you stand on. The good, the bad, and the ugly. And every one of these shoulders is a data point. But it's not just a data point, because every one of these shoulders is a human being, which is a culmination of millions of data points. We're all flawed. We all have traits that in one time period would be considered good, and another time period considered reprehensible. And all of those perspectives are just that. They are perspectives. We try to look back retrospectively with this time period's moral compass and try to project that moral compass onto an entire population that stands on a whole different collective experience of humanity. The number of examples are infinite, but let's just use the big one, slavery. If you go anywhere, 500 years ago, it's common practice. Arabs and whites, Caucasians, Christians, the transatlantic, Atlantic. Can you just speak correctly? Silly goose. There's a test that a professor uses every single year on every single class. And I like it because it does point out the hubris in most people. If you were in 1933 Germany, how many of you would be against the Nazis? And he says that every year in every class, every kid raises their hands. And then he asks them now, what is something that you do currently, that you support currently, that goes against the establishment order?
And would get you killed.
And that's the proof, is it's the same people who say they'd be against slavery. You're retrospectively projecting your 2025 moral compass onto a human population that is wholly different. And the messed up thing about that moral compass, the most messed up thing about that moral compass, is nobody in their own time understands that their moral compass is fucked. They look back retrospectively and say they were fucked. They look forward, future thinking, and say they're going to be fucked. But me right now, that's the way it should be. That's the way it ought to be. But that's not true. Slavery good? Probably not. It's really rare to use an absolute if you're trying to speak. I don't want to say academically, but if you're trying to speak an idea that will last for millennia, you should probably not use absolutes very often. So is slavery bad? Probably. This is why I'm so interested in history and religion and philosophy.
Yep.
I think
you'll get it.
I think if you understand these things, even if you desire to understand these things, it will impede you to, it will implore you to self-reflect at all times. It'll, right or wrong, it will, it'll coax that still small voice. Because that's what a human relationship with the Almighty Creator is. It's just a genuine desire to know. And the more genuine that desire is, the more you'll learn. And that, it just makes sense. Because, it's a whole lot easier to learn something when you don't already know everything. And how many of us, myself included, spent a whole lot of our lives acting as if we already knew everything? I look back and I feel as though I robbed myself of so many opportunities to learn. Because of pride. Oh, I know how to do that. Or shame. Oh, yeah, I know how to do that. Or guilt. Oh, yeah, These are coping mechanisms that we use when we aren't genuine. When we don't speak genuinely, something happens to our brain. And I'm believing this more and more. I've got, anecdotally speaking, but I don't speak negative hypotheticals into existence anymore. I try to be more precise with my speech. I try to be more careful when articulating ideas. Because these ideas are the shoulders. We don't actually stand on our mothers and our fathers and our grandparents. No, we stand on their ideas. We stand on the ideas that they stood for. And every generation has a duty to illustrate to the next generation what ideas are going to be stood for. To take from the old, to illustrate to the young.
Yep.
And every man and woman has that duty. And to take that duty seriously.
Man, woman.
Because if you don't, then you start to lose sight of the shoulders that you stand on.
That's not good.
You start to lose sight of the ideas and the principles that they stood for. It's like everything else. If you don't use it, you lose it. If we're not going to use the first right of the First Amendment and freely practice our religion, because you're blessed to live in a nation where that's 1A, not 1B, not 1C, not 1D, not 1E. I know it's the one that no one talks about anymore. Everybody talks about, I got the right to free speech. I have the right to free press. I have the right via the First Amendment to protest peacefully. I have the right as an American citizen to exercise via the First Amendment the right to petition my government. But everybody forgets 1A, the right to freely practice your religion. The right to freely practice your religion. That's why we got on those boats. I don't think many people will understand why we got on those boats. Without 1A, you don't get 1B, 1C, 1D, or 1E. You don't get 2. You don't get 3, 4, 5, 6. You don't get any of it. Because if it wasn't for 1A, hey, guess what? Those people, those shoulders that we stand on, they wouldn't have gotten on those damn boats. If they didn't believe that in their time period, the old were chopping the heads off of the young for not submitting and subjecting themselves to a religion they did not genuinely believe in was important, they wouldn't have traveled across the Atlantic knowing a good number of them were going to perish, not only on the road there. Yeah, I say road, I know it's an ocean, but hey, you're smart enough, you can follow this line of thinking. But once they got to their destination, it's like, cool, we have a shore. It wasn't because they couldn't go, fuck you, king, if they were like, I need to get on a boat. It wasn't because they couldn't get together with a gang of misfits and go, damn the king, that they got on those boats. The right to freely practice your religion. 1A. But hell, who cares about that anymore? That stupid idea. Well, what the fuck do you think happens if you got rid of the brain of the body? That body ain't doing too much good. Nope. And that's what you done. You've castrated the freaking Constitution by ignoring 1A.
More like lobotomized, honestly.
And then you want to claim 1B, C, D, E, the right to fucking sit there and shoot your guns, the right to not have soldiers quartered in my place, the right to illegal search, the right to search and seizure bullshit, all the other ones. The society is becoming more and more morally bankrupt. You'll see good deeds if you look.
But you have to look.
And you yourself have the capacity to do good. So do that.
Yup.
But as a society, we are epically failing the youth. And that's really all I care about. Because these adults, look, if you are an adult, fuck you. Okay? Because at this point, here's what you're going to do as an adult. You're going to take all of these preconceived bullshit that you've been indoctrinated with your whole life, and you're just going to start projecting onto people things that are completely untrue. But because you were indoctrinated, propagandized, you'll put labels on every single person you meet. Lots of times, a lot more than just one label. And I'm not saying pattern recognition doesn't exist. I'm not saying your life experience doesn't matter. I just don't think a lot of us make our decisions based on our own personal life experience. I think we make our decisions based on whatever the fuck the news person says, whatever our phone says, whatever the latest fucking podcast says, whatever. And I just don't see that as being a good way to make judgments about how to dictate the narrative of your life. I thought it'd be more beneficial to use actual life experience and... But here we are. Let's see. It's been sitting in the parking lot of the job for over an hour.